Are we able to make something a little more heavy-handed? Yeah. Oh, okay.
So, let me give you a scene. You're you, that much is obvious, but you're staring at a sleeping body who's also you. It's your fears, your scars, your worries, your ambitions, your memories, your dreams, your wants, needs, mistakes, achievements. It's all you. But the fact is that it's just a little different physically. This sleeping you is weaker and unable to shoulder a task that needs to be completed. Your awake self, the one whose hands you see when you raise them to your face, you're stronger. You're prepared. You're able to do what's been asked of you. Now, you may be the one that's awake, but you're both aware. You're both living beings. You're just trapped under a hell within the Atlantic Ocean. One that's created entities that want you dead. One that doesn't have any other signs of friendly life besides an onboard multi-tool AI that you have to take with you. Even then, she's only conscious when plugged into a terminal. But the reality is that you know you can't stay here. You know you can't leave your multi-tool and its AI behind. If the sleepy version of you wakes, they'll be too weak to follow in your footsteps. They'll be without any sense of companionship, of any connection to others. They'll be left behind, too weak to fend off the monsters that live outside your current room and want you dead. And you might be saying, oh, this other body isn't really me, I'm me. But here's the thing, you've heard it speak already. You've heard your voice come from it. You've heard its own opinion of the situation. There is no doubt that this is at least a copy of you. And you're left with two choices. You can leave this currently sleeping version of you behind and doom them to a life by themselves, scared alone, wandering until their natural life is brought to an end, or you can kill them in their sleep. You can be the one to save them from the troubles of a waking nightmare by keeping it to a resting one. You can prevent any harm from coming their way by removing that chance. The known fact is that you have to march on. You have to bring your AI companion and its payload to your new site, your destination. Your real choice in this matter is whether you allow that sleeping you to wake up or if you keep them dreaming. There's realistically no right answer. It's a matter of what you'd be able to live with, because in the end, it won't matter. Your choice doesn't matter. You'll both die eventually, the only difference is how.
Holy shit! It's just like Undertale.
So this is this is going to be a cheery video. We're not going to go into the massive plot points of Soma, the video game, but we are going to touch on some of the characters, some of the scenes, and the ending. So, I do highly recommend playing Soma already if you haven't. I love this game. It is from one of my favorite developers, Frictional Games. They're the ones that made Amnesia, The Dark Descent. They have done a fantastic job making something more of the existential sense versus horror, and I just can't recommend it enough. And I say this because spoilers are obviously going to be ahead, so take caution in that. Soma is both a visual horror game and a psychological horror game that positions you into multiple moral questions and dilemmas where they just don't matter. The surface of the Earth has been wiped out by a comet impact, rendering it inhabitable. You're stuck within a facility underwater where the only survivors of said impact were, or are assumed to be. Humanity itself is considered dead in turn, and you can try as hard as you can to be a good person, but you'll still end up hurting others in order to proceed. You might have to hurt machines that think and talk like humans. You might have to rip power cords from existing humans on cruel forms of life support so that you can power the area you're within. And yet, that's where the first big question comes into play. Are these machines and people truly alive? Are they the last pieces of humanity? What does it mean to be human? No, Automata, down. Down, not yet. You're for later. We have to beat you on stream over at twitch.tv/AngelicAlexi before you can think of that. So this is where I want to mention the main quote-unquote antagonist of Soma. It's a bioengineered AI that's designated as the Warden Automated Unit, the WOW, an organic and mechanical wonderment that oversaw the underwater sites that made up Paphos 2, watching over projects and the site's personnel. It was like a site-wide futuristic Alexa. One of its jobs was to distribute this substance called structure gel. It was a maintenance aid, acting as a lubrication, as a conductor, or hardening to act as a bonding agent. It all depended on how the WoW sent it electrical signals and what program it was given, though after being injected with the structure gel itself, the WoW grew corrupted. The structure gel wasn't just something that was distributed by the WoW anymore. It was a means of spreading its influence across Paphos too. I mentioned a comet hitting the Earth. The WoW made it its main priority to preserve the remaining human life after that catastrophic event. The problem was it didn't have a clear definition of what was human. It used brain scans of humans under its understanding of preservation to create these beings called mockingbirds. They were essentially mimics. The brain scans, or more formally known as neurographs, were initially developed to better map a person's brain and recommend personalized treatments for any injuries. But when that wasn't scientifically sound, a robotics team picked it up to instead use that human mind as a base for AI development. The WoW, being made to improve upon items in quality of life, actually modified both the brain scans and the pilot seats, which controlled local machinery with ease. The WoW's main way of preserving humanity became uploading a person's brain scan into machinery using this modified neurograph tech. Now, they wouldn't really notice these brain scans outside of like a slight headache afterwards. The scan itself was kind of like having your picture taken. It would just be snap and your consciousness would be downloaded. Where the problem arose was within the upload. Because it's like having a picture taken, it's that frame perfect moment of your consciousness. When it's uploaded into a new piece of machinery, you don't believe that there was any movement. You would think that you were still sitting in that pilot seat and you just woke up in a completely new space. It would be disorienting. It'd be like if you were a kid and you fell asleep in the car, and then you had woken up in your room after your parents had carried you inside, but you had no idea and it was just instantaneous. So, of course, to help your brain kind of avoid that shock, you would still see any mechanical limbs as human ones. You would be unable to hear the mechanical whirring of pistons and gears as you manipulate your new body. And that's what became your life after death. But if you were still alive and on the brink of death, then the WoW would instead use structure gel to fill your wounds and make you biomechanical systems like an artificial heart or lungs to keep you alive. But of course, because you would have to be hooked up to the WoW, it kept a lot of people in place by using that structure gel to kind of bind them to a floor or a wall. You wouldn't have that chance of walking or moving or sometimes even talking. Is that really human? Are you alive if you're only another cog within its own machine? And you as a player, are you killing these people if you're releasing them from the WoW's grasp? It doesn't feel right. It doesn't feel how humanity should be preserved. So what is the actual preservation of humanity within this universe? Catherine Chun had an answer. She was a computer scientist within Paphos 2 who was trying to preserve minds further with an AR capsule, a device who gained the nickname the Ark. Yeah, because, Noah's Ark. Okay. It was a world that would let people live on through their brain scans in this artificial space. It was suspected that during research, the WoW had copied her early prototype of the Ark project. The WoW's version allowed a perfect copy to run without limitations, and that let Catherine copy the WoW's developments to create a proper artificial life after death. The changes in the programming ensured that it could run endlessly, and still allow for the uploaded person to grow in their personalities and mentalities. The agreed upon plan for the Ark was to use a space gun within Paphos 2 to launch the Ark into space. The Ark itself would be fitted with a solar panel and means to orbit around an existing satellite to allow itself to sustain for many, many years to come. Now, in the YouTube shorts, yeah, that's right. I'm not actually talking about the game for a little while. I'm I'm as surprised as you are, because I found the web series and I've been dying to talk about the web series. Can I talk to y'all about the web series, please? Because with all honesty, these shorts made by Imagos Films are absolutely fucking rad. They've done a fantastic job to keep their shorts atmospheric and relatively close to the source material, and sitting through and having previous knowledge of the game made it better for me, but I don't think it was required. So, you know what? If you want to experience them for yourself firsthand, you can give the video a little pause and give it a look. I'll have a little playlist in the description. Yeah, I won't be mad because you'll come back, right? I mean, I hope you'll be back, but I'm going to start with little recaps and talk about them, so you've been warned. Also, welcome back. I missed you. Now, when it comes to the YouTube shorts, they're divided into the item shorts and then the transmission mini series. Mini series. I swear to God, English is my first language. I promise you. Anyways, the first relevant short, item number 2656, Vivarium, stars a woman named Imogen Reed, and if you've played through Soma, you'll know that this is the first body that Simon is forced to inhabit. Now, the short features her tinkering with the WoW's prototype AI capsule, the Vivarium, and after tinkering with it for some time, the device displays a recreation of the current room, and then it spawns in the brain-scanned copy of Reed it had on hand. And of course, Reed wakes up in the simulation in a panic, and then the real Reed realizes what's happening and panics in turn. The important thing is that this device, the Vivarium, becomes the basis of Catherine's research towards finalizing the arc. The other item short, item number 4017, Mockingbird, is a short that features Reed speaking to a Mockingbird version of Adam Goloski, who was uploaded into a busted robot. Now, Reed asks him a series of questions which contradict Adam's current understanding and gradually get him aggravated. It activates his anger towards Reed, I guess. The main thing being that she's asking him things like to stand up while she knows very well that he has no functional legs. Yet, Adam believes fully that he is standing until she contradicts that point and where he goes and kind of blows up on her over it. In another test, Reed has the living Adam talk with the Mockingbird Adam, in which they gradually grow more aggravated towards each other. As a test, the living Adam asks the Mockingbird Adam to see if he's really him, what his dad's last words were. Something that no one else knows, something that the WoW couldn't know, but the upload would know. They both would know. It reinforces the fact that upon their brains being scanned, it acts like a screenshot, a save point. The uploaded person would be able to remember everything that the living person could up until that spot. Now, Reed wants to experiment further by challenging his relations to his current robot body, but of course, Adam gets freaked out and he leaves. Now, when it comes to the transmission series, I'm not going to go into full detail. I do expect that you watched it because I recommended it, and everything that I say is good has to be good. So you're good. You're worth it. You're doing great. So anyways, transmission number 3, we see that Adam is drinking structured gel while trying to hide it from the other crew members, being Reed, namely. And we've seen people eating the structured gel in-game with Terry Akers. Now, the gel itself is made from mostly proteins. It's not totally bad for you, but Terry Akers also did end up hearing voices from the WoW and tearing out his own eyes, so I wouldn't recommend it. In transmission number 4, Reed is shown to have a negative opinion towards the WoW, mentioning to her station dispatcher, Vanessa Hart, that the WoW's been trying to sabotage them, mentioning too that it's taken over the helpers to help build the Vivarium to work within its own plans. Though Vanessa reassures her that WoW can't think for itself and it's likely more so following a basic order to preserve life. But then again, that brings up the idea of how does it Reed what is human. Transmission number 5 features Adam, again, drinking structure gel, this time with the WoW using the recorded voice of his daughter Lisa to tell him to drink up, daddy, eat your breakfast. You'll become big and strong like me. In which he is actively being edged on by the WoW to consume the structure gel. Now, later on, Adam goes to find a fault that he was notified of, where he starts to hear his daughter calling for him instead, where he follows the voice until finding a hole within the wall, where he sees a recreation of Lisa made by the WoW. It uses recordings of his wife and daughter to lure him to stay watching until the image approaches the hole and vomits structure gel onto Adam. Now, it in turn causes him to vomit up a memory disk he swallowed. I don't think I would want to swallow a USB, but who am I to judge? Now, from transmission 1 to 5, it's not in a chronological order. It's more of like here's snippets of events. Starting from transmission 6, it starts becoming a continuous story. With transmission number 6, it starts with the Lambda crew being all holly jolly until one of the members, Jessica, has a bolt fly out of one of the walls as she's probing it and puncture her skull. Now, when they bring her to the medbay, they discover that it's been completely overtaken by the WoW. The entire medbay is just covered in structure gel. When they get Jessica down to the table, she convulses. They try to stabilize her for an adrenaline shot, and she dies on the operating table. The one who hit her with the adrenaline shot, Richard, later wakes up at the medbay with a morphine needle in his arm. I have to assume it's voluntary since it just kind of cuts to the scene. But oh no, Jessica's body is gone because she's in one of the branching rooms, standing against the wall, completely coated head to toe in structure gel in her own blood. She's wide-eyed, unable to speak, metal prongs sticking out of her head injury. The WoW's taken up its main directive, to preserve humanity. The WoW brought Jessica back to life, and the short ends with Richard beating Jessica to death with a fire extinguisher. Transmission 7 starts with Adam rushing in and beating Richard to death. He's similarly covered with the structured gel, screaming before he's subdued. While they're undergoing their plan of action, another crew member, Martin, arrives to tell them that Richard and Jessica's bodies are gone. Their plan changes to having Martin enter a basic ductile suit to try and prepare a ship named the Curie to operate, as he's the only one available. Everyone else has a task to complete for their own specialties. Martin goes to prepare with Reed, while Dorian and Baxter, who subdued Adam, set them up at the cargo bay. Now, in the cargo bay during his detention, Adam presumably froze up another memory disk, and it's encrusted by the structure gel. It shows a video of an interview with his wife where she explains to authorities that Adams physically abused her and Lisa. He removes the chip mid-speech and nearly swallows it, but throws it instead. Then mechanical whirring, a bright flash of light, and Adam hears his wife call to him, hears his daughter say that she misses him. He grabs a wrench and tells the WoW off, but still approaches like a fucking idiot. But that's where we see the WoW's recreation of Lisa, who is suspended by a series of metal arms with structure gel kind of symbols painted upon her face. The last transmission, number 8, is a bit of a longer one, so I will have this be a little bit more of like a straight recap. Adam starts saying to the WoW that this isn't real, that Lisa died during the impact, and when he asks what this is, the recreated Lisa responds with family, before grabbing Adam and lifting him into the air, screaming. We cut to Reed trapping Marvin behind a pressurized airlock. Dorian and Baxter enter to discover that the door access is tampered with, and when asked what she did, Reed just states that he's gone. She must have known or thought that he'd been infected by the WoW during his climb and his entrance into the Curie. Now, Vanessa enters to tell them that Lambda is about to explode, and it cuts to Reed again, listening to traffic control to try and calm herself down. Then to Marvin mentioning that she made this possible, that they're going to live forever. It again cuts to Reed's initial checks of the vivarium, An operator mentions it's been constructed out of her helper parts, recognizing some. She gets closer, and the operator tells her to back away. There's multiple cuts of Imogen on the floor, being told to brace herself, being told by an infected Adam that this was the WoW's plan, that they can change the world, of Imogen being told to wake up as she stabs Adam in the chest with a hardened piece of structure gel from his arm. And then Imogen Reed wakes up, structure gel in her body and face. When told to brace for impact, it's because they did get the Curie running, but they weren't able to use it as expected. Baxter and Vanessa are loading up and gearing themselves with a basic ductile suits, talking of a monster that was on the Curie. The new plan is to walk to Feta on foot with the Curie being compromised, and when Baxter asks if there's anyone else once Reed approaches, she assures him that they're the only ones left. Baxter mentions Martin by last name, who happens to enter the room in his ductile suit. The difference being his visor is completely covered in structure gel. But wait, he was left outside. He was left into the ocean, wasn't he? Well, when Martin approaches, he knocks Baxter aside, which causes Vanessa to rush towards them. Martin repeats it's the weight of the sea as he applies pressure to her head. Baxter gets up again and is grabbed by the neck, having his head bash against Martin's helmet over and over and over until he's limp. Vanessa is nearly crushed by Martin pressing himself against her, up until Reed removes his helmet. Structure gel pours out, rendering his body immobile, and Vanessa tries to convince Reed to get herself rescanned again, to be part of the paradise she's accidentally helped create. Reed simply tells Vanessa that she'll need her suit before walking out of Lambda. Reed travels on foot to Site Upsilon, where she sets her helmet in the main exhaust chamber and approaches a makeshift terminal similar to the vivarium. She removes the rest of her suit and makes a marker nearby. It's not the only mark. She logs in but is unable to bypass the connection from the WoW. Instead, she shuts off the power. She takes the blame for killing them before she returns to the main exhaust chamber, where she manages to crawl to her helmet as she suffocates. But before she has a chance to put it back on, she hears a mechanical whirl and her own laughter. Reed turns onto her back and lets herself die as she sees herself and the others upon the Ark, as she imagines a life that she could never have, a life where she gets to smile and embrace Adam. The terminal reactivates and states that the battery reserve will be able to last for 201 days. Alright, this is where it gets conspiracy theory E. According to in-game documents, Vanessa had walked to Feta and had a health report taken on December 20th, 2103. Transmission in the overall timeline should have ended on December 18th, 2103, as it took Vanessa 2 days for her walk. Reed disables the power on the 18th of December, 2103. The backup power for the WoW can only last for 201 days. Simon wakes up on the 9th of May in 2104, which in counting the days is 143 days after the initial shutdown, by the production lines present having been down for 143 days, 11 hours and 37 minutes, which means the power initially went off on December 18th, lining up with the shorts. Oh, Jesus Christ. Remind me to breathe, please. The main thing being that transmission is such a major part, in my opinion, of Soma as a, I guess, franchise, because it could lead up to the reason for Simon's activation in the first place. The WoW may have been trying to repair a body for some time so it could reactivate the power station again, while also trying to preserve humanity by reviving Reed and using a brain scan without accuracy and knowledge of who it was. If it was unable to activate the station again, it wouldn't have been able to preserve humanity. It would fail its main objective. And honestly, the most interesting idea going for this series, however, is that this is thought by a few to take place entirely within the Vivarium. Reed etches a mark at the terminal before accessing it, and it could be her number of attempts going through the simulations. It would make sense. Like, why Reed is so calm in the face of Martin. Why Reed doesn't get along with her other crewmates, because she knows that they're not real. But this would also explain some inconsistencies at being a simulation versus the reality that's present within Soma. Like Reed stripping herself of her dive suit in the series, but being in one already within the game. why we get the flashes between Reed's memories through these glitches within the videos, why transmissions 1 through 5 are out of order, and until mentioned now because I completely missed it, the transmissions 2, there is a scene where there's 2 whales performing a mating call instead of Lambda. Most whales can only stay underwater for about an hour and a half. The apocalyptic impact caused massive firestorms and dust storms to ravage the Earth, on top of causing massive tsunamis. Within the initial days of the impact, any mammals that would need to surface would have been afflicted by the air growing toxic and much, much, much warmer. These whales shouldn't have been alive, and I can't say the WoW affected them because they don't have these blue barnacle-like growths seen in the game. Even within Paphos 2 being within the middle of the ocean, the worst place of impact was Spain. And using Paphos 2's coordinates from the wiki, Spain is one of the closer pieces of land. Okay, my main point, coming back to Reed, she's used whale songs to calm herself down. What if the WoW was spawning these whales into the vivarium to calm her down after her episode of panic after a nightmare? Okay, so while the transmission series may not be canon, the vast majority of these characters have been stationed within Paphos 2 in-game. Plus, we have some fun when it comes to our protagonists. Simon, our player character in Soma, is a mess of electronics shoved into the corpse of Imogen Reed. They are both unintentionally thrown into a situation they can't handle on their own. Reed is forced to kill her friends to shut down the WoW, and Simon is convinced to launch the Ark into space. He's thrown into a world he doesn't know and has to come to terms with the fact his body isn't his. He's just a mechanical brain piloting a meat suit. And of course, the work of Catherine Chun is still important in transmission. It's the basis of the vivarium, with her scans being consistently mentioned too. Vanessa continues to try and convince Reed to get another scan so she can live on the Ark properly, yet Reed repeats that the Ark is not for them. And she's right, it's for their copies. Their initial selves are never going to see the Ark. It's up to them to launch it so that their latter selves have that chance to. And mentioning Catherine, she's our partner in crime within Soma. She's the one that built the Ark, she's the one that organized the brain scans after the WoW improved upon them. Her project was continuously put on hold from people ending their lives in the hopes of waking up on the Ark. They were confused about how the Ark operated, not aware that their brain scan would be a completely separate entity from themselves. No matter how they tried to explain it, it just never seemed to click. One way of explaining it was that it was a coin toss, a 50% chance that you'd remain conscious within Paphos 2, and a 50% chance that you'd wake up on the Ark. Those who wanted to make their awakening on the Ark a 100% chance just ended their lives shortly after the scan. They thought that ending their own lives, it would make it a guarantee. But if we had never launched the Ark in the first place, they would have never woken up. They wouldn't have lived on at all. Catherine wasn't the cause of these mass endings, though. It wasn't Catherine's fault her coworkers didn't fully grasp how it worked. It wasn't her fault that Simon didn't fully grasp how it worked. At the start of the video, I made mentions of a strong you and a weak you. Catherine explains this idea of a coin flip to Simon when you need to transfer your consciousness to a new body, one that's within a heavier duty dive suit to get you to the deeper sections of Paphos 2. You win that coin flip, taking control of the new Simon in the better suit. You have that choice of what to do with your old body, to kill him or to let him live. The reality is, though, the coin flip doesn't really exist. Your transference of consciousness isn't a gamble. Your transfer of consciousness is based on what you believe. While getting your brain scanned, if you thought you would be transported to the Ark, you'd expect it. You would be able to adjust to it. It's what your mind was planning for. But if you were hesitant, if you didn't think it would work, you might blink awake, confused and out of place. You might panic, not knowing where you are or questioning what you're doing. We have the basic diving Simon bringing himself to start the transfer. We have the new diving Simon who believed his mind would be transferred over. So when his brain scan is copied a second time, he can adjust. He believes that he's woken up in the lucky body. And this is the same reason why the Normal diving suit Simon asks Catherine if it's worked directly after the transference. Then the basic Simon is put to sleep, but not without the awake Simon berating Catherine for the transfer. Despite the way that Catherine explained it, Simon still believed it was more of a brain transplant than a copy, and he calls her sick and deranged for allowing this to happen. This is where Catherine gives you those two choices. Either you can let that Simon live, and his battery will eventually deplete, or you can drain it yourself in a matter of minutes while he's still asleep. If he did wake up on his own, he'd wake up without Catherine. He might think that the scan didn't work, he would be lost and confused, maybe even grow agitated from the reality of his situation. He went in with that idea that he'd wake up in a new body, just to be betrayed. Simon I like as a character. He questions his situations and still may not fully believe his conditions, but he questions nearly everything he's going through. It's a nice chance to get explanations from Catherine. It's a nice chance to create conversations. But when he accidentally makes things tense with his own emotional outbursts, you feel it. Catherine getting distant for a time, getting nervous, Simon growing more and more scared. And at the ending of the game, when you get the Ark to Site 5 to launch it into space, Simon sits with Catherine hooked up to the Omega space gun. The Ark is about to be launched, and while the gun loads and prepares itself, Catherine lets Simon know that current scans will be uploaded. Catherine works well, and Simon's uploads just in time for the launch. Yet, unlike the new diving suit, we don't flash onto the Ark. We're left with Simon and Catherine sitting at the pilot seat and within the console. Simon cheers and cheers, but Catherine knows fully well it was their copies that will be on the Ark. Simon gets agitated by the fact he's still in the chair. His anger gets the best of him. He yells at Catherine and blames her for being stuck. But her own reactions bring her to become too emotional. In turn, it fries her Cortex chip, the very thing holding her. Those Cortex chips were only meant for basic AIs. They were never meant for people. They weren't designed to withstand extreme emotions. It's the same reason her simulations would automatically shut down if a person got too emotional. But Simon's outburst leaves him alone at the bottom of the ocean. And even if you let that prior version of Simon live, you'll never see him. There's no way he's getting down to Phi. There's no way Simon is leaving Phi without Catherine's help. Soma is a game of enemies, but the WoW is not our enemy. The proxies and the mockingbirds are not our enemy. The WoW never tries to directly stop Simon from getting to the Ark. Only the mockingbirds and the proxies made by it did, and they weren't controlled by the WoW at all. Created, yes, but never under its operation. Birthed by its hand, but only acting upon their own free will. Catherine only wanted to give her friends and coworkers a hope after humanity's end. Those who killed themselves to join the Ark didn't fully comprehend how the brain scans worked. They made up their own stories. Simon only wanted a way of having a happy ending in a doomed world. Even if they were successfully uploaded to the Ark, even if they were successful in firing it into space, and even if it was able to open up from its chassis and be exposed to the sun's rays and power itself, Simon would still be stuck under the sea. The only enemy I really see in this series is Simon and his uncontrolled emotional outbursts, not knowing or realizing that they'll hurt those around him until it's too late. Soma does a wonderful job of building its atmosphere in a hospital environment turned hostile. We can understand the WoW was only working off of its main prerogative, trying to keep humanity alive in the only way it knew how. We may not consider machines to be human, but within this practice, they're an uploaded soul in a sense. They have those attributes that many may consider to make us human. They remember what their prior lives had, and they take the chance to make new memories. Soma explores so many questions. What makes us human? What it means to be human? If your actions have a purpose? If you really have a choice? what you're comfortable with when it comes to these mockingbirds' lives, if you're okay with changing the circumstances of their situations. It's a world of dread where you're the only hope, and even then, much of it is false. If we play off of the idea that the WoW had uploaded Simon in hopes of him restoring the power plant, you are the reason that the WoW was able to continue its preservation of humanity. You are the only chance to give a dead scientist the satisfaction of completing our project. You are the one that decides if the mockingbirds you run into live or die in some cases. And when it comes to the remaining humans, you have the power to end a miserable life of mechanical support, to give them that hope that they'll wake up on the Ark, to save them from laying in a pile of structure gel formations, hanging off of that last thread of life. Because if there are any humans left on the surface, you're never going to see them. They're not going to survive forever. I would love for people to play Soma themselves, to take that time and to pace yourself, to read the little notes and documentations. And when you're done, you can tell me if you've tried to keep everyone you could alive, and I can laugh at you. Because in the end, your choices won't afflict this world. There is no good option. There is no bad opinions, because who's going to judge you? A woman on an LED screen? Who's going to remember your impact in this world? Who's going to know if you've left someone to die to preserve humanity? The world's already doomed. You're the one who's going to start a new one and give humanity a second chance. Second chance that you'll never get to see. All you can do is try to make it a little bit easier for yourself and for those around you. And even then, you may never know if it was the right option. But even saying that, it's still a world that runs off of hope. The hope that you'll be able to launch the Ark into space and give them that second chance. The hope that what you've done is the right thing. And there's something sickeningly beautiful about that contrast. It may not be the right option. It may not even be the wrong option. It's the option that you're willing to take. So then it raises my last question. What exactly are you willing to do for a brighter future?